Hey guys, it is Laura Hyatt with Team Callahan, and we are here for another edition of Coffee Talk, so thanks for tuning in. Reminder, Coffee Talk is every Thursday at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live, and today our special guest is Billy Norse from Weissman Law, so welcome.
Thank you, and good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So Billy, you are a closing attorney.
Yes.
Right, here in town.
Yes.
So, which is super important. You need those when you're in real estate. So, talk to us a little bit. Drink your coffee, because that's right. It's got to be.
Can I make a confession real quick?
Go ahead.
This is not my first cup of coffee.
This is my third.
Oh, really?
So, cheers.
Cheers, but it's really good.
You're welcome.
That's fantastic coffee.
We only make the finest here at Team Callahan.
You know what I heard?
What's that?
I heard, the talk shows and the shows people go on and have the coffee cups is actually water.
Well, not here.
No, this I can
we're
tell
legit.
this is.
It's coffee talk, so we're going to drink coffee.
Yeah, and this is an honest, integrity-filled coffee
That's right.
talk.
That's right.
Yeah.
Michael Caputo, we only drink coffee. Okay.
I'm disappointed, Michael.
Anywho,
right.
So talk to me here. You're a closing attorney in town. So, I mean, in the scope of real estate transactions, like, what is a closing attorney?
Right.
And why do we even need one involved in the process?
Yeah, so really, a real estate attorney is kind of divided into two areas.
Okay.
And I call it, and I'm just simplifying,
Yeah.
happy and unhappy.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're an unhappy real estate lawyer, you're involved in disputes, like boundary lines, neighbors mad at each other, issues with the title, and those people like to go to court, and people usually come to them unhappy.
Right.
Fortunately, I'd like to say I'm a happy.
You're the happy one?
Yeah, I'm a happy because people come to me in one of the biggest moments of their lives. Usually, a lot of times we're dealing with first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
And this to them, I mean, and actually on the stress level, it can be very stressful, right?
Sure.
But it's
a lot of emotions involved.
Yeah, but getting your first house or buying a house is such a big transaction, and people are really excited about it. So, what I do as a closing attorney in that regard is I get them through that process.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, we get them that house.
Right. So you're doing things kind of on the back end, essentially, like making sure the chain of title is good, making sure that contractually speaking, everything's been met.
Correct.
And you're also coordinating, a lot of it is coordinating with the lender.
Yes.
Because you're a place of, your office is really where the money changes hands, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so we tend to break it down into three stages of the closing process.
Okay.
We have the pre-closing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're not having a lot of conversations with the buyers or sellers during that time, except to get information from them. But in the pre-closing process, one of the main things the attorney's office does is review the title.
Right. And so what is the title?
Okay, so title is basically the history of the home.
Okay.
And
so how it's changed hands over the years, who owns it and whatnot.
And you could get, it always tells a story.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you go to buy a used car. Most people don't want to know the story.
Right, they're like, just,
they're like, no, don't tell me the story. But they do want to know if it's been in wrecks or something like that. But a house, there is a story there. And a lot of times the title searches go back a long time, Well,
especially in Savannah. I mean,
yes.
We have a lot of historic property here. It's not uncommon to sell a 7,500-year-old house pretty frequently.
7,500?
75.
Oh, yeah, 75 too. Okay.
Yeah, 7,500. Wow,
that's really
that's
old.
Real. It's 75 to 100.
Yeah,
accident just came out.
Yeah. But so you could actually go back and look at all those deeds. And that's what we do. And we look at the deeds and we look at old mortgages and stuff. And then we try to make sure that basically the title's clean moving forward to the new buyer.
Right.
And sometimes there are warts, little things we got to clean up here and there or just straighten it up.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, we want the buyer and the lender to get a clean title on the property. So you don't have to worry about anyone out there trying to claim ownership to it.
From knocking on the door or anything. Gotcha.
No, you don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. So talk to me then, what happens at closing day? What happens at closing? Are we coming to your office? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, and it actually has changed some now with COVID. But traditionally, now Georgia's what we call an attorney state, which means the Supreme Court of Georgia has said that a real estate closing transaction is the practice of law. So that's why in Georgia, you actually close with an attorney.
Okay.
Now in other states, that might not necessarily be the case.
They're more like title states, I think is the term that they use.
They call title or escrow states.
Okay.
And in those states, it's kind of common for folks just to go to the title office, sign the docs, and leave.
Right.
Because Georgia is the attorney state. It's very common to have what's called a roundtable closing.
Okay.
And everyone, the buyers,
literally at a table like this.
Just like this.
Yeah.
And you have the buyers on one side, sellers on the other. You have the agents, and you also sometimes have the loan officer will show up.
It can kind of be a party.
And usually it is. It's a big party. And the thing is we try to make it very fun and comfortable for everybody because it is a big transaction. And that's the way it has been up until COVID.
Right.
And now every attorney's office is doing things a little bit differently. Sure. But for the most part, there's less people in the room. All right. So people are actually coming in. We try to have just the buyer, just the seller. We try not to have other family members in there if we could help it. Right,
because pre-COVID, I mean, if your mama, your sister, your brother wanted to come, we'd figure it out. You know?
We just pull in as many chairs as we can, and like you said, it's basically a party in there, and everyone's talking and having fun.
A lot of signing of the papers.
A lot of signing, and of course we have all these sweets and chocolates and stuff, and everyone's eating. And
it's all the rage at attorneys' offices. I don't know why, but it's a thing. It's totally a thing.
I know, it's big.
So really, at closing day, that's the day in Georgia that the buyers and the sellers, they're signing all the paperwork.
Correct.
Right. Some of the stuff they probably already signed before, for like the lender and whatnot, but most of it is anything that needs to be documented or signed to change possession of the property from one party to the other.
Correct. And I think what surprises most people is that they may be signing 100 to 150 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, you are just signing.
Especially if you're the buyer. I will say buyers have more signatures. Sellers, they can get off a little easier than that.
You're right. The buyer, because they have the loan package. Now, so if it's a cash transaction, they won't have as much to sign. But when you're getting a loan, there's a lot of paperwork involved with the loan. And honestly, the stack could be that high. Yeah. It is just so much paper. And so people see it and their eyes get wide. And I tell them,
That's why you have the candy, right? To keep the energy going?
Exactly. We keep the energy and give them plenty of coffee.
Yeah.
Yep. Gotcha. And so that's basically, one of the things, that you expect is you see all this paperwork, and I'll explain the paperwork to them. I mean, some people don't want to explain to them, they just want to sign, but, we can explain everything that they're signing. So
they're always going to know what they're signing before they sign it.
Correct. And there's a few things that are important to sign. You sign one thing called the settlement statement, and that's like all the numbers for the transaction. It's got how the money's coming in, going out, all the disbursements.
Right.
Another big thing with a loan is the promissory note, which is basically the contract.
I promise to pay you back the money that you're loaning me.
Yeah, and then that's basically a contract with the bank. And then the big thing they sign is the security deed.
Right.
And the security deed we always explain that very thoroughly, but that's basically the mortgage. And that's the document that says that if you don't make your payments, it gives the lender the ability to do a foreclosure process if they want to. Now, lenders aren't in the business of foreclosing.
Right.
They always
like
want you
to do that, but they have an obligation.
And that's a big document you sign at closing.
Just pay your mortgage, you get to stay in the house. It's really that simple. So at closing, we're signing all these papers. Buyers are there, sellers are there in traditional closings. It looks a little different these days. But typically speaking, how long am I at the closing attorney's office for a closing?
Usually it's 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, just depending on how many.
Yeah, and it depends on sometimes if you're talking and having fun, you might be there an hour. It won't even feel like an hour.
Sure.
But again, if we're just focused and signing, and I've noticed now with the COVID, because we just have less people in the room, they're actually going faster.
Sure. Yeah. And it's also a place that if they have questions, it's not like you can't ask questions. It's definitely a place if you have questions or hey. Especially if the buyer and seller happen to be there at the same time, especially in pre-COVID transactions, it was a great opportunity to say, hey, how does that sprinkler system work?
Exactly.
Or handle any of those little minutia details about owning the property. It's always a great place. And typically speaking, if the contract says you're getting possession on closing day, you're going to walk away with keys.
Typically, yes. In fact, most of the time you do. And then on your point, oftentimes the sellers love to tell the buyers about nuances with the property, about this window or about the garage door or about, this garden outside. And,
my grandma planted that tree all that
we buried our dog over here and you hear everything. But, we still have that to some extent. Even with people signing in different rooms, they tend to, want to try to seek each other out after it's over and then talk about all that.
Sure. So let's talk about kind of what should I be prepared for if I'm headed to closing, both as a buyer and then as a seller. So as a buyer, I'm here to purchase my home. Maybe it's for the first time I've ever bought a property. It could be at multiple times or whatever. What should I be prepared for? What do I need to bring with me?
Yeah, I think, first you got to bring your ID.
Right.
And then with my law firm, you could actually upload that ID onto our portal ahead of time. So you don't have to bring your ID if you just do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that a buyer needs to do before closing is to wire their funds over.
And their lender will help them identify how much money you actually need to bring to closing.
Correct.
In that closing disclosure. Exactly.
You'll know that ahead of time. Sometimes it is last minute. It's just the way it is. But as soon as that information gets out, you need to go to the bank, wire whatever monies you need to have wired over. One of the challenges with COVID, though, is that banks aren't always doing walk-in hours.
Sure. So you may have to schedule an appointment.
Exactly. Schedule an appointment. You may have to do drive-through, or you may need to do that wire earlier than the past.
Yeah.
In the past, some folks would just go to the bank the morning of closing, have it wired up, and we may need to do it the day before.
Yeah. And so keep in mind, too, that money, it takes a minute to go from point A to point B. So we don't want to wait till the last minute. So it would be probably a best practice then, if I'm a buyer headed to closing, maybe that kind of week before closing, just to check in with my bank to find out what their procedure is. If I do need an appointment, how quickly I need to know. You may not know the exact number of amount that you need to send, but that way you're clear on whatever their procedures are.
No, I think that's a great practice. And another thing too is your lender should send you something called a closing disclosure a few days before the closing. That will have a number in it. That number may change slightly, but that's a good guess. That's what you'll need.
Yeah. Awesome. And then come prepared with like your autograph arm ready.
Yeah, right? I would maybe schedule a massage afterwards, or an ice pack, or maybe a lot of people just say a cold beer.
There, whatever you want to do to celebrate. Yeah. That's awesome. So what if I am a seller? I'm coming to your firm to sell my property. It's closing day. I assume the ID is the same.
Yeah, the seller's got to bring the ID too. We've got to verify who you are, and then the only other thing I'd say that a seller needs to think about is how they want their funds.
Right.
Traditionally, the seller would just get a check, walk out of there with a check. We don't do that as much anymore because you won't have access. If you deposit a large check in your bank, it may take a week.
They have holds on them sometimes.
Yeah, they have holds. So oftentimes sellers want a wire now. So we ask, ahead of time if we can. We have their bank wiring information, so we could wire the funds over to them.
And depending on the closing time, there's a chance that money could show up in your bank the same day, but typically it's within a day or two that it's showing up.
Correct.
Business days, I should point that out.
Correct. So, if we did a closing in the morning, there's a good chance the seller would get their proceeds in their bank, if it's by wire, by the afternoon.
Yeah.
But, if we close later in the afternoon, you're right, it may not hit their bank till the next day.
Right. And so also as a seller, this is a great place to bring your keys, any extra keys that you have. We want to make sure that if we're changing possession of the property, the buyer actually has a way to get in. So that's a good thing to bring. Garage remotes, we also see those that are kind of things that you don't think about, especially if it's like clipped into your visor in your car. Just those little things that you're not going to need anymore. You can coordinate with your real estate agent as to whether or not you're going to leave those at the property, maybe in a kitchen drawer or something like that, or you're going to bring them to the closing. But you want to make sure there's at least one set of keys there for the buyer.
Yeah, and the thing about the keys, it's common sense. People do forget them.
You're in the middle of moving, it can happen.
And a lot of times folks rely on their agent, and the agent might not be attending for some reason. But the key is also symbolic.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing, is because you get done signing all this, we say, congratulations, you got your home. Well, you want to have the keys kind of like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
You need the key.
I remember I bought my first house, and they slid that key over, and it was like, it was real.
I think it glows.
It
glows
probably does.
Yeah.
We should look for light up keys for some reason.
That's a good idea. So I'm thinking that.
We'll get that. So anything else that we should be prepared for, or just things that you wish people would know kind of about the foundational level of a real estate closing?
Yeah, I would think most people need to know that we're on your side. No one's out to get you. As the law firm is trying to facilitate this transaction, and again, for most people, this is the largest transaction in your life.
True.
And everyone's kind of working together to bring this together. Most folks don't know, buyers and sellers, how hard their realtors are working. I tell people all the time, I say there's so much that goes on with our law office and behind the scenes that the realtors are doing that they don't get credit for. The lenders are working really hard too.
I think on average there's about 30 plus people that are involved in any one transaction.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And just from the behind the scenes with all the support staff and people, there's a lot of moving parts, and closing day is kind of like it's the culmination of all that effort.
Yeah, and closing day is an awesome day. And if you could time it where you're closing on a Friday or something, is even better.
You just move right in.
You move right in and go celebrate. But No, I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway is, because it is very stressful. So, you should enjoy the process, getting stuff ready for your loan and all that. Because again, as a buyer, you're more likely to talk with your lender during the process and with the law firm. In fact, if we're talking to you a lot, that might not be a good thing. You kind of want us just to do our thing and everything's okay.
It's all good.
Yeah, but just know everyone's looking out for you and working hard to get the deal done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for coming to Coffee Talk.
Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoyed our actual coffee.
Yeah, I love it.
So awesome, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to do this every Thursday. So Coffee Talk is every Thursday at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live. So be sure to tune in to catch that. And then if you have any questions for Billy related to real estate closings or any kind of real estate help that he can give you, we'll make sure to put his contact information out there for you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, bye, guys.
Stay